Hello, everyone, and welcome to this morning's edition of the Jitsi community call. Today, I'm going to start with an update on the current situation, more so than a development update, because events have sort of overtaken the regular functioning of this community. So we are currently seeing an extremely high load of conferences all across Meet Jitsi. We have ramped up our infrastructure multiple times. We are running more than 1,000 bridges around the world, but who's even counting? So we have a call that we'd like to address to the community. There's a number of things that we are doing in general through our days. And we sort of always rely on the assumption that sooner or later we'll be able to meet with others face to face to discuss a ticket, to talk about a lesson, ask the teacher questions. And this is currently not really possible. So we need to provide ourselves and the people around us with convenient and secure ways of communicating without giving up on the trust that you have in your regular one-to-one conversations. And we do, in this community, believe that the easiest way you could do that within just a few minutes is by setting up your own Jitsi instance. So please go ahead and do that for yourselves. Go ahead and do that for your community so that you don't compromise, so that you have a way to communicate face-to-face, so that you don't have to compromise on the ease and of communication and the trust of your communication. So we've published a few references to our installation notes on jitsi.org. Go ahead and have a look. If you want to take this one step further, if you are working for a product that makes these same assumptions that sooner or later you'll be able to meet and discuss the thing that you're presenting to them, then it's very easy to actually update that product so that it would use that installation that you just made. With Jitsi specifically, it's very easy to do that because there's no need to set up in advance anything about a meeting. You can just come up with a random URL. If you just set up your thing at meet.example.com, you just go with meet.example.com/UUID and you're good to go. You just have to generate a UUID locally and or some other sort of unique identifier. Don't ever need to talk to our servers. Just put it in there, let people connect. I would also like to remind everyone that we have our Iframe API. So if you'd like to actually have that video experience integrated in a product, it's really just a matter of a few lines of code. And again, go on jitsi.org and you'll see the call to action and useful pointers to these things. If any of this sounds like too much hassle, figuring out where to host your server, actually standing it up, deciding between containers and virtual machines, feel free to use our instances. Meet Jitsi as usual. Again, it's seeing a lot of load, but we're doing the best we can so far successfully to keep it going. And there are a number of people that are using it. So you could start there. The employer of a bunch of the development team here, 8x8, also offers an instance with similar properties, 8x8.vc. Same thing goes for there. Feel free to go ahead and use that in your integrations for products, meetings, until you're ready to spin up your own instances. And with that, I thank you, and I'll end this part of the live stream. Like it just was okay for a second, and then it went. All right, back to our usual community call. Again, there haven't been a lot of changes in code to what actually we've been shipping, not a ton in terms of functionality. I'm going to let the team speak, but what we've been doing is hardening around Jitsi and conference allocation, There is actually one feature that shipped. It's the ability to mute everyone and to mute everyone but someone. So you can go on any thumbnail now and just select the speaker and click mute everyone else, so that it's easy when people are creating noise to just focus on whoever's speaking. Speaking of muting and kicking, interestingly, it's turning out that while these have never been a problem for work-related conferences, well, as soon as this tool got in the hands of school kids, well, they started kicking and muting their teachers. So we are looking at ways to make that a little bit harder, so that school does indeed happen. Some fun is good, but you've had enough fun already. So we'll see when we'll be able to ship something like that. Boris, George, Jonathan, and Brian, is there anything you'd like to share with the changes on Jikofo and the bridge with regard to the load situation?
We did discover one thing, that we determined that if there's a bug in one of the XMPP libraries we're using, such that if stream management is turned on, it has a bug. So we have some patches to all of the Java side server instances to turn off stream management at the client, at the XMPP clients in those instances, which seems to have improved things. The version of Jitsi we're using right now has those fixes, and so far so good. But just to be aware that if you're not using the latest and greatest, you may need to, and you have stream management turned on in your XMPP server, you may have a bad time.
So those changes are moved to master now?
Yes.
So in the last few weeks, we've been working on scaling and performance. So VideoBridge master pretty much is stable and includes fixes and improvements. So if you're running into any scale issues, I would recommend updating. VideoBridge 2 is not yet in the stable Debian repository. The only reason for that is that it requires some work, and we have other high priority tasks right now. But it is considered stable. It has been running on Jitsi and on the 8x8 deployment. So please use that. One more tip for environments that need to scale and where performance is important. We found that data channel messages can be a significant contribution to load on the bridge. So for Jitsi, to accommodate larger meetings in particular, we have increased the stats interval. It used to be 2 seconds, and I believe we use 10 or 20 right now. You can tweak this in config.js. And another change is disabling end-to-end ping. This is also in config.js, and doing those two together greatly reduces the number of data channel messages on the bridge, which helps with load. So if you expect to do large conferences, do that.
One thing, I think the stats interval, we actually had to change the code for, so I think that should be in master now. But the end-to-end ping was a config.js thing.
Yes, these are both in the Jitsi Meet client, so you need a relatively recent version.
Was that performance issue for the data channel specific to the data channel, or just like all bridge channel WebSocket and data channel?
Yeah, we use WebSockets, so it affects WebSockets for sure. I'm not sure if you're using SCTP how it affects performance, but for WebSockets for sure.
Do we even support SCTP for New Bridge?
Right.
Yes, and yeah, I would say that it's more about the volume of messages, not the transport. I would expect that data channel would have similarly caused issues on the bridge.
Yeah, the transport, it's not the transport proper, it's the processing and the number of messages.
Got it.
Maybe it was already mentioned in the previous call, but we also tweaked the Jacobo selection strategy to be based on the packet rate instead of the bit rate, because that's more proportional to the load. So if anybody is doing like the Jacobo based load balancing, it may be interesting to update to the latest Jukas.
One important change that we made, and I realize I also forgot to mention it, is that we switched away from Bosch into WebSockets. Pavel, would you like to talk a little bit about that?
Yes, right now we only switched for web. There's still ongoing work for testing this on mobile client. It requires patch to prosody and probably a few other things. So I'm going to write a thread on community forum which will contain all the things needed for WebSockets to work. They are not included in the Debian packages for now because there are many combinations of different prosody versions and such. So we're starting without that, at least for now. We still need to push changes to prosody upstream. So that will also make it easier in the future. Yeah, it's been deployed on Jitsi, so right now it's there. I don't know. I think that's all.
So if we just pull from master across, that will be enough. In addition to, I guess, adding some updates to prosody, like are there prosody plugin updates? Or I guess you're going to put that in your article, like the manual things we need to do?
Yes. You will need up-to-date Jitsi client, and then there's extra configuration to prosody to enable stream management module and a patch to WebSockets module. I think that's it, but I'll describe everything.
That's great. Thank you.
Anyone else from the team wants to update on something?
We have made some updates on mobile as well, and some more are coming. So with the increased active installs, especially on Android, we ran into some interesting shenanigans. For instance, we had enabled hardware video decoding because it sounded like a good idea to save on CPU. But turns out that we get tons of nonsensical crashes out of the first two hardware manufacturers of the world, so it just doesn't make any sense to keep it updated, so we rolled that back. And then also there's this thing to integrate with a system dialer called connection service, which part of it depends on the manufacturer's implementation, and they are also quite buggy. So what we have done is we have disabled that on our build for Jitsi Meet in the store. If you use the SDK, you can turn it on and off if you want with a feature flag. But on the Jitsi Meet app, we have turned it off. And since the last update, which was 20.0.3, things have been a lot more stable than in the past one. And then we also heard lots of feedback on the usability standpoint, specifically on how to invite others to your meeting. And we are going to roll out an update which makes this a lot more obvious. We added this thing we call a lonely experience. So when you're alone in a room, a new button will show up and tell you, hey, click here to invite more people, and the system's share sheet will show up. And then we will reshuffle some of the menus to put some of the options that it makes more sense to have a little bit easier to access, like raise your hand and things like that. So I think we're hoping to release that in just the next couple of days. Initial testing is going good, so nothing to change there. And for those of you who are not using the Google Play Store, We also updated F-Droid, so now the F-Droid version is on par with Google Play Store again. Sorry, I dropped the ball on that one, and it took a couple of months to catch up. And that's all in mobile land right now.
Sounds good. So I think with that, we're going to close the team update and open the microphone for questions from the floor.
Can you elaborate a little bit more on the selection strategy that's changed for the Jacobo-based load balancer, or maybe just a little more broadly, like what things in terms of scaling we need to think about? Do you have any information, for example, like how many concurrent connections, if we do the ePOL thing, can Prosody support Jacobo? Since I guess that's the main sharding mechanism. It's like per Jacobo and Prosody. And secondly, is there any sort of connection or syncing between Prosodies? If, for example, if we ever wanted to do persistence at the XMPP level, is that ever something that's possible to do, or I assume like each Prosody sort of stands alone and is more stateless, or is there like a federated XMPP setup?
So while someone else from the team is preparing to give a more competent answer, I'm going to start with saying that we are actually discovering the limits of Prosody ourselves. And a lot of them are just a matter of, so obviously things like switching to ePOL, as you mentioned yourself, making sure that file descriptors are properly configured. We were being stuck at 1,000 connections at one point, which turned out to be a file descriptor issue if I didn't get it wrong. Today, we were experiencing issues around 4,000, but those are still unconfirmed, and we haven't really investigated them, so we don't really know what was going on. But there is this number that's now floating as a potential current ceiling, 4,000 connections per shard. So there's that. With regard to GCOFO, Boris, I don't know if you want to elaborate there more about how we switched from bandwidth to packet rate, and or something else you want to add?
So
or anyone
far,
else for that matter.
Yeah, so far go ahead.
I don't have any.
Yeah, I get confused. So far the change is simply switching from bitrate to packet rate because we observed it correlates with CPU use more. We have more changes coming in that direction. And switching where the load calculation happens. Right now, Jacobo just uses packet rate and assumes that the lower the packet rate of a bridge, the less loaded it is. We're planning to eventually move this to the bridge, where it's going to consider the CPU use as well as recently added endpoints to predict its load. And we are enabling Octo, not for geolocation, but to support large conferences and to stop sending participants on a bridge which is highly loaded. This should be coming this week, so it's not in yet, but it's almost ready.
Oh, cool. Octo's been disabled this whole time, or last couple of months, correct, or no?
We enabled it shortly about a week ago, but because of some other issues with regard to scalability that we ran into, we had to disable it for now. We are planning to enable it for load balancing only very soon, and then later bring it to enable both load balancing and geolocation.
Great. Cool. And then that's coming in like the next week or so, or?
For load balancing, I imagine either the next release or the one after that. So this or next week, I think is reasonable, but I'm not sure about any of that.
Great. Cool. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Paul. Any other questions?
I just want to add, Matthew Wild, Prosody developer here.
Hey, Matt.
Hey.
Very nice to have you.
I'm good, thanks. Stuck in the house with 2 children, but otherwise good.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah. Obviously 1,000, 4,000 connections. Those are not generally limits within Prosody. Typically, file descriptors is the first thing to check. I'm not sure what would happen around 4,000 unless that's what you bumped the limit to. But yeah, we definitely have servers with many more connections than that, so it shouldn't really be a problem.
Do you know of any limits?
Super helpful. Yeah, go.
Do you know of any limits on like message delivery or something, like the number of messages coming through, IQs and the like?
No, I was actually chatting with Damien via email about stuff similar to that, but we don't have anything like that unless you're talking about actual Prosody modules. We don't have anything like that for clients. Prosody doesn't, it's not stateful in the sense that it won't track what clients are sending. So that shouldn't really be an issue.
I more meant like on terms of like CPU utilization in processing the strings that are being built and then moved or anything like that. Have you seen anything around that?
No, there's no limits inside Prosody itself. There's a module that does basic kind of rate limiting based on bandwidth, which if you have enabled, obviously that will kick in. But that's again, that's just simple byte counting.
Where would you expect it to break down though in terms of CPUs for stanzas per second?
CPUs, I've basically never seen an XMPP server that is CPU bound unless there's something really weird going on. Generally, you tend to hit memory limits way sooner. So unless you are literally pumping many packets through, it's generally not a problem. I mean, on my laptop, I tend to get about 20,000 plus per second. I haven't done extensive tests just because that's a number people aren't generally interested in. I'm currently knee-deep in trying to optimize memory usage. So yeah, we really don't have much of an issue with CPU usage generally.
Okay, perhaps we're running into an interesting case there because we have a MOOC with a lot of occupants that are all broadcasting.
Okay.
And the way we limit stanzas is with the firewall rule. So I guess there's a lot more stanza processing than actual stanzas going over the network.
Yeah, that could be a case. I'm currently working with someone on, they have a similar setup where they have many people in a MUC and trying to come up with a way to optimize all that. There's some stuff that we already do that you can tweak, but yeah, I'm hoping to push out some more stuff that will allow you to simply, for example, collapse status into just simple online, offline, and things like that. And yeah, I mean, I don't want to get too off topic, but yeah, feel free to hit me up if you want more details on that. But there's exciting stuff like that in the works.
Cool. But so if that were our problem, we should be seeing it in terms of CPU utilization, right?
Yeah, if you have a bunch of MUC occupants, then I can see you would get very spiky CPU usage. If your monitoring is granular enough, then you would see spikes as you do the broadcast. Generally, it's still, I can't imagine it being enough to actually make a server overloaded because we're basically just copying stuff into buffers and then sending it out. So again, you've got the memory usage kicking in there as generally being the worst problem. But yeah, I mean, it's not something that I've tested in particular, like trying to stress test how many people can be in a MUC while you broadcast lots of stanzas. But it seems like maybe it's something I should look into and see if there's some easy wins there.
I wonder if we. So did you check whether the machines that were? Did you actually look at the machine whether there were CPU spikes, or did you just look at Datadog?
No, so today, for example, we were seeing some connection timeouts coming from the Prosody side, but the CPU wasn't pegged at 100%. It was spiking, yeah, and there were 4,500 connections established towards it, but it seemed okay. We did see in the past week the case when Prosody was indeed pegged at 100% CPU usage, and that was killing us. And it turned out that one of the, like, there were two main culprits. One of it was, you guys can remind me, the bridges connecting to every single Prosody instance, I believe. So lots of chatter. And also, we had a module that sent some events, I think, to a remote server. Is it, Aaron? When the mod mac events, does it do a post, or what did it do? I forgot.
Yeah, it's a HTTP query post.
Yeah.
Jitsi.
Yeah. So basically, having that one made our lives miserable. So disabled that, and we were no longer pegged at 100%. So I think, yeah, if you have like a rogue module or a module that's doing sort of the wrong thing, I guess it is possible to get in that situation. But as for today, no. I went into two of the Prosody servers, and CPU was going from 0 to 30 every once in a while. Didn't look like it was super overloaded.
Do you, Matt, when we tell you connections timing out, does that ring any bell for patterns that you've seen in certain situations?
So inbound connections to Prosody,
Yes.
like timing out on the client side, that can
timing
happen.
out on the Prosody side.
Timing.
Wait, so where was that go?
Sorry. So what we were seeing is we have Nginx front in Prosody, and Prosody wasn't spitting any errors whatsoever. But Nginx was saying, hey, read error. I couldn't read the entire packet before the connection was closed. So right now, we actually are not sure if in this particular instance, it's something that was happening to Prosody, or it could also be something that was happening on Nginx. We haven't pinpointed this issue right now, like yet. We don't. I'm not sure in this one.
So again, just check Nginx isn't running out of file descriptors or anything like that. And if it was actually struggling to connect to Prosody, if Prosody was overloaded, it could be like double check that module is using the non-blocking HTTP API, for example, just stuff like that. If you accidentally use the blocking API, then obviously you're going to run into hard times if you get lots of traffic. So yeah, stuff like that. But in general, like if you can't connect to Prosody, it means it's busy doing something. It just means you have to figure out what. Routing stanzas is generally easy peasy, but as soon as you start getting firing stuff off like events to different places and things like that, then obviously you need to start watching those as possible choke points.
Thanks for the insight. We have disabled all of that sending, so I think that is no longer an issue. The file descriptor limit was bumped, at least for Prosody, and
also for Nginx.
Also for Nginx. All right. So I just think we need to keep on digging to see what went on today on that one.
Yeah, we could probably go through our modules as well and see if maybe we're doing something wrong there.
Yeah, I mean,
but it wasn't super, like, it wasn't a strong failure, because in the end, because everything is retried, there was no perceivable impact on the user. Like, unless you were unlucky and your first attempt hit a 504 and then the entire meeting didn't happen and then you just refreshed and it did, you didn't even notice that once every, I don't know how many pings timed out, it doesn't matter. You need a few in a row before we kill you, the meeting. So we kick you out of the meeting. So, I mean, it wasn't bad in that sense.
Some preliminary research indicates that it's a thing between Nginx and WebSockets. So there's something to look at there because it was specific sort of to WebSockets, some of it, right?
The Bosch was timing out too, so I actually
Bosch was timing out too.
the only
Okay.
thing, yeah.
Yeah.
We just have more WebSocket connections now, so we're seeing more errors on them.
All right, Matt, we're immensely grateful that you stopped by.
Yeah, this was awesome. Thank you.
No problem. I want to try and join more regularly now that I'm stuck at home. So.
Well, you're always very welcome here.
Yeah, thanks a lot, man.
All right. Anyone else from the floor?
Just small update. Boris is chatting here. So he some statistics about the messages that Matt was mentioning in the Mac. So we have 72,000 stanza per second with all those bridges. So when the firewalls drop 70, yeah, go on.
Yeah, that would be what we'd see, except the firewall drops most of them.
So what is the role of the firewall? So you use that for filtering stanzas as part of like a clustering strategy, or
so there's a firewall rule that drops all stanzas except we're using a mock the way you would normally use PubSub with one subscriber. So we drop everything, all presence that is not to the one subscriber. If that makes sense.
I see. Interesting.
And what final call? Anyone else with questions or comments from the floor?
I have one more question if nobody else has any other questions. Just this, I know we're running a little over, but we're looking at sort of optimizing. Thank you. We're looking at optimizing bandwidth detection because we've just noticed some degrading video behavior in a lot of cases. And is the recommendation still sort of the what's it currently set to is like the server side bandwidth detection as opposed to the client side? And separately, is red available or in use for kind of as another strategy for error correction at the audio level? Those are maybe two things that are slightly disconnected, but yeah, I don't know if there's any, maybe at a little higher level or more generally, like recommendations for optimizing or improving bandwidth detection, because we seem to get it doesn't seem to always guess right, like where video will be okay and then it'll just really degrade for some clients, and it seems to point more towards just inaccuracies in bandwidth detection.
So send-side bandwidth estimation is still the recommended way to go. We only use receive side for clients that don't support TCC, namely Firefox. I don't know if you're running the latest version of the bridge, but a few weeks ago we fixed the problem with audio packets being tagged with CCC, which some versions of Chrome don't acknowledge, leading to drops in bandwidth estimation. So again, I advise you to pick up the latest bridge if you're not using it already.
That was Chrome older, on the order of Chrome 69 or something, so pretty old. But current Safari does have this problem, we found. So
okay,
if you're
good to know.
As far as red, I don't think we're using red for anything right now. Opus uses its own forward error correction, so that's what ends up being used for audio.
And that should always be on, right? That sort of defaults to being the in-band FEC is for Opus should be defaulted to on always, right?
Yes.
Okay.
For video, we have retransmissions with RTX, but no FEC right now.
Great. Okay. Good to know. Thanks a lot.
All right. And let's do one final person, maybe, if there's anyone. No? All right. Thank you very much, everyone, for stopping by. Don't forget, run your own Jitsi Meet instances and wash your hands. Not equal level of importance. Let's not overdo. Thank you, and see you again in 2 weeks.
We hope.
Stay safe, everybody. Thanks a lot.
Stay safe,
Thanks,
folks.
man.
Cheers.
Cheers.